Hi and welcome to another writing lesson. In this lesson, we are focusing on the structure of the Tax 2 essay. It is very important that you logically organize the essay that you're writing. You need to put together your thoughts coherently so that the examiner is able to extract the information you have in the essay. It's very, very important as far as your score for coherence and cohesion is concerned. You need to be able to get your structure right to get a good percentage of the 25% that you could get for that particular criterion of the um, tax 2. um, what makes up a very good essay, or which parts do we need to get into an essay so that everything is logically presented and organized? We know the fundamental structure of every essay: introduction, body, conclusion. This is no different from what you're required to have in the IELTS Tax 2 essay that you're writing. Would go into each of these one after the other to understand very well what these parts contain. The first part is the introduction, and the introduction sets the tone for the entire essay that you're supposed to write. That is the very first part of the essay, and it has two parts. It has the background information and the thesis statement. The background information and the thesis statement come together to form the introduction of the Tax 2 essay that you're writing. The thesis statement also has two parts. It has the answer and the objectives. So, objectives, sorry. Let's take each of these two parts one after the other. I mean the two main parts of the introduction, the background information, and the thesis statement, to understand what we are supposed to do. The background information is the paraphrase version of the statement or statement. When we looked at the introduction to the Tax 2, we saw that every Tax 2 question has two parts. It has the statement part and then the question part. To get your background information, you're supposed to focus on the statement, whether there be two or one or three. You need to paraphrase that. What's the meaning of paraphrasing? You are required to say exactly the same thing that the statement in the question is saying, but you're not supposed to use the same set of words. Make sure that you use different words, but in the end you are conveying the same information without any changes whatsoever in the information and the meaning of the information as contained in the question. So how do you do this? The first option is for you to replace keywords with synonyms. And synonyms, you're not just looking at one word to replace another. It may be more than one word. So far as it conveys the same meaning as the keyword, then it can pass for a synonym. Of course, there's nothing like a perfect synonym. It's just the nearest in meaning. And nearest in meaning for IELTS, context is very, very important. Even in everyday writing and communication, context is very, very important as far as synonyms are concerned. So you pick a couple of the keywords and then you replace them with synonyms. For example, you have a keyword difference. You can replace that with distinction. And this is one way of paraphrasing. You can also alter the class of the word. You can change the word from a particular class to another. And what are the classes that we have in English? We have nouns, we have verbs, we have adjectives, we have pronouns, and others. So you're changing it from one to the other. You're changing it from, for example, a verb to a noun. So the verb improve, you change it from that state, it becomes improvements. And that's the second way of paraphrasing. The third is for you to make the meaning of the word clearer by adding a word or two. You're making the meaning of the word clearer. That is the third point. Add qualifying words. You're adding a word or two to make the meaning of that keyword clearer. It means that you're going to maintain the keyword, but then you want to add a qualifying word or words to that. So an example would be exercise. To make the meaning of exercise clear in the context of the question, you may qualify it with physical, with spiritual, with mental, depending on the context of the question that you have. You can as well give examples as a way of paraphrasing. So you have a keyword, languages. Then you give examples. It means you understand what languages is, and then you are giving examples accordingly. So languages such as English, Spanish, Chi, then you continue with whatever you have. The last resort is for you to maintain the keyword, probably because any attempt to do any of the above four would really distort the meaning of the information that you have. You just want to maintain the keyword as such. Or probably you are unable to really use the other options. They are not readily available. Then you maintain the keyword. You have a keyword such as wristwatch. You don't want to change it because you're not finding a synonym. You cannot alter the class of the word. You cannot add a qualifying word. You cannot give examples. And so you just maintain it as that. That is also allowed. But you make sure that you use the four options above first. Then your last resort, like I mentioned, is to maintain the keyword. As you do this, you're constructing a sentence. There should be a subject, there should be a predicate, and it should convey a very complete information. You're not just writing these single words or these keywords in isolation. You're bringing them together to form a very complete sentence. It could be simple, compound, complex, or compound complex, as the case may be. This is the background information that you're supposed to write. Then you move to the next part of the introduction, which is a thesis statement. And we mentioned early on that the thesis statement has two parts. It has the answer and then the objective. What is the thesis statement? It is a sentence. Sometimes there may be more than one. So it is a sentence that expresses the essence of the essay. It tells the examiner that this is the pivot. This is the central part. The entire essay that you would write would hinge on the thesis statement that you have. There's the answer part. What is the answer part? This part is not always there for every IELTS question. Depends on the question that you have. If the question requires you to take a position, to either be on the left or the right, then you require an answer for that. And there are just three questions or variations of these that require you to have an answer. So one, do you agree or disagree? You have to choose one. To what extent do you agree, or to what extent do you disagree? Is it a total agreement? Is it a partial agreement? Is it a partial disagreement? Is it a disagreement to a large extent? You need to state that. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? This is also one that requires you to give a biased essay, so to say, so that if you agree that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, then maybe you have two advantages, one disadvantage. or if the reverse is the case, you have 2 disadvantages and 1 advantage. So these questions require you to take a stance, and so you need an answer for them. Questions such as discuss these views and give your opinion. You don't need an answer for that because you're not required to take a position. Then the second part of a thesis statement, which is the objective, is always there for every IELTS Tax 2 essay that you write. At this point, you are giving the examiner a cue as to what the essay will be doing or would be doing. This largely depends on the instruction or the question part of the Tax 2 question that you are looking at. For example, the essay or the question is asking you, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of education? You hint the examiner that that's exactly what you'll be addressing in the essay. And of course, we know that the Tax 2 essay you're supposed to write is an academic essay. This means that you have to go impersonal, because one of the features of academic essays is that the focus is not on the writer, but on the opinion that is being projected. So you use the essay or the writer instead of the I pronoun. So for example, if you're writing your objective, you would write, the writer would explore the merits and demerits of teaching and learning. If the question is asking you to look at the advantages and the disadvantages of education. Or if you want to write your answer, do you agree or disagree? This essay is in agreement with the assertion that education is very relevant to the development of any economy, if that is what the question is asking you to do. In instances where you have an answer or the essay demands an answer, and of course, definitely an objective, you can think of putting these two together in a compound or complex sentence, depending on the structure you want to use. This is the first part of the essay, the background information and the thesis statement from the introductory part of the essay that you are writing. The next part is the body. And over here, the real job begins. You're supposed to raise points to address your stance. If you took a position, if the question required you to write an answer, you have to address that stance that you have. You have to raise points. You have to rationalize why you are agreeing or disagreeing, why you think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. You need to address that. Or you have to address the question that you have. So for example, you have to answer the question of what are the advantages and the disadvantages of education. You need to address that. So in instances where, for questions where you have an answer and definitely a question, you have to address these two parts in the body. You need a minimum of 2 body paragraphs. And the principle is that you do 1 idea, 1 paragraph. What do I mean by that? For example, you're looking at the idea of freedom as an advantage of education. That idea of freedom is treated in 1 paragraph. If you want to treat another advantage, you have to create a separate paragraph for that. You don't bring together 2 ideas in 1 paragraph. It is not entirely wrong, but examiners want you to elaborate your points, not just mention a number of ideas and leave them at that. You need to extend them, you need to expand them. That is how you use the language. By just mentioning points, you haven't done anything. you need to delve into them. So you reserve a paragraph for an idea so that you're able to do that extensively enough. When you are dealing with a body paragraph, for each of the body paragraphs that you have, there should be a structure. And what is a structure? You take body paragraph 1, you need a topic sentence. What is a topic sentence? A topic sentence is a sentence that contains the main idea to be discussed in the paragraph. So the idea of freedom is put into a sentence. Freedom is just a word. You put that in a complete sentence, and that becomes your topic sentence. Then you need supporting sentences. You need sentences that would expand this topic sentence that you have. You could explain, you could give examples, you could give reasons, you could even cite data, you could manufacture data for the sake of the essay that you're writing. And those become your supporting sentences, throwing more light on the topic sentence that you have. Then you need a concluding sentence. This sentence relates back to the topic sentence that you have. You need to summarize the paragraph that you've looked at. This concluding sentence is not the conclusion of the entire essay. It's just concluding that single paragraph that you have. It could be anything. It could be consequently, it could be therefore, it could be to make this work. Whatever it is that you want to highlight in the concluding sentence, it should, however, relate back to the topic sentence that you have. So you're doing this, you're having this structure for every body paragraph that you create in the essay that you're writing. The last part of your essay is a conclusion, and that is started with in conclusion, then comma, in conclusion, then comma. Ideally, don't use any other in summary to cut the long story short, in the nutshell, to summarize. These ones are ideal for informal situations. And remember, you're writing a formal essay, an academic essay. So you begin that with in conclusion, then a comma. What are you doing in the conclusion? You're restating your position. If the essay required you to state your position in the introduction, you need to restate that. Then you move on to recap your topic sentences, because they captured the main ideas you discussed in the essay. This is why it's very important to have topic sentences. If you want to write your conclusion, you just go to those topic sentences and then you paraphrase them into your conclusion. If the essay question, you were not obliged to state your position, then of course when it comes to the conclusion, there's no position to be restated. So you just go on to recapping, to paraphrasing the topic sentences that you gave in the body paragraphs. This is the essay. This is the structure. It is organized enough. It's logical enough. If anybody is reading the essay, the person will be able to follow your train of thought. The person will be able to follow your arguments that you're projecting in the essay that you are writing. So very quickly, before we end this lesson, let's look at what we have looked at in this particular lesson. So we looked at the structure of the Task 2 essay. We said it has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The introduction is the first part, and it has two parts. It has a background information, which is a paraphrased version of the statement question. Then the thesis statement, which has an answer and an objective. Not every question will require you to have an answer. So you have to analyze the question very well. Do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree, or to what extent do you disagree? Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? These questions require an answer. So you state that impersonally without using the I pronoun. So the essay, the writer. Then you move to the objective part. You need that always for every question. And you are giving the examiner a cue as to what the essay is going to focus on. So this essay would analyze, or this essay analyzes the merits and demerits of whatever. Then you state that. From there, you go to the body where you raise your points. For every paragraph that you raise, you need a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. One idea, one paragraph is the principle. Then you go to the conclusion where you restate your position if the essay has one. If it doesn't, then you recap the topic sentences that you raised in the body paragraphs. This is the end of your essay that you're writing. Thank you very much, and